Very good morning to you all, and compliments of the new season. I'm hoping that whatever you desire comes through. I want to set the record straight on a number of issues. The first one is my meeting with Comrade Kasukuwere, Kila Zivu, in South Africa. It wasn't the first meeting, neither is it going to be the last meeting. For as long as we are Zimbabwean, we shall meet, we shall talk about any issue that we feel is of national interest, personal, business. That's what must be understood. And I could see that ZANU-PF has a tendency of labeling everyone G40, G40, G40. But I also believe that the media has not been diligent enough to really give the history of where we are. As a former office bearer in ZANU-PF of repute, not Nafikezu. My involvement with ZANU-PF did not start now. It started when I was involved in sport, when I was 16 years old, when we believed that we needed to break the barrier of white dominance in sport, in rugby and cricket. And some of the journalists are young, they're probably not born at the time. It's important to go to the archives and understand people's histories and what they stand for. I'm pro-black. I've always believed in the success of our own people. That's the reason why I deliberately decided to focus on the minority sports at the time, which no one could break barrier, even government couldn't. I can single-handedly say that I changed the discourse of rugby in this country from it being white-dominated to being black-dominated, to a point that I was offered a position as the vice president of rugby. I would have been the first vice president of rugby. I opted not to be in that position. I then opted for Brian Kagoro, who was a lawyer, to say, Brian, can you be the vice president of rugby? Brian became the first black vice president of rugby because I wanted to develop the sport. Cricket was the same again. It was a game for the minority with the whites, and we fought it again to a point that I rose to being in charge of the development of these two sports nationally. I was 16, 17, 18, 19. If you follow my history, you understand that I was the first guy to knock down Kid Power in a sparring session at the Family Health Studio, just along this road. Kid Power was never flawed. In that gym, there was Pikrai Neketek. There was Selma Tandamoy, who were journalists. They did a story. Kid Power fell. He had never been knocked down. Historically, I was a boxer. I was supposed to go to the Commonwealth Games to represent this country. But my parents were against it. They felt boxing was a thuggery sport and felt I must not. But I felt hard done because it's a very competitive sport. So if you follow my history, you understand, and it's important for us to understand people's history. Why am I trying to get to this at the end of the day? Is that where there's injustice, I speak out. It just does not have to be injustice pertaining to whites and blacks. No, we fought for the black rule. We fought for black emancipation economically, but is that what it is? Brief background that you must understand. 2004, there was a Congress, ZANU-PF Congress. And the ZANU-PF Congress of 2004 is what I want to tell you, those who did not know. We were involved in ZANU-PF. There was Cholocho, which involved people like Jonathan Moore, which involved about 7 provincial chairpersons. Daniel Shumba was one of the chairpersons representing Masvingo. The speaker, Advocate Jacob Mdenda, was Matt North. Chiangwa was Mash West. The current president, ED, then controlled 7.5 provinces. The only 2 provinces that was not in control of was Mash East and Mash Central, which are critical in anybody winning an election in this country from a national point of view, because they're as good as one-party state. We lobbied, and this was an internal democracy scenario, internal democracy, which is allowed to prevail in a party. You choose who you want, and unfortunately, with so much Putin and all that, 2004, I supported ED. The question that I have for you, for those who claim to support ED, if you're not there before 2004, then you don't know ED. That's when politics was politics. It was a battle of the Karanga's supremacy and the Zulu supremacy. The Karangas believed it was time for them to be in power. While the Karangas believed it was time for them to be in power, they also collaborated with other minority tribes. It was given that the Zulus had been in power for a long time, and the Karangas must come in. The Karangas teamed up with the Ndebeles. So Mat South, Mat North, Bulawayo. And then they came and teamed up with Manikalen, Vanasamanyika. So the provinces I'm talking about, if you talk about Mat North, Mat South, that's 3, and Bulawayo, that's 3. Masvingo, 4. And then you've got Manikalen. Then you've got Mash West. Then you've got Harare. So I spoke about 7.5 provinces for you to understand the demographics. So the only 2 Zulu provinces in total were Mash Central and Mash East. Mash West is not really a Zulu province because a lot of people who have moved there during the struggle, it was a Zipra-controlled area. And most of the people moved there from the Karanga region, Masvingo, to go there. So it's kind of mixed. So you cannot call it a Zulu province. Tyson Kasukuwere was involved, working with the late General Rex Mujuru, who was power in terms of what happened in the struggle and what happened in Zambian politics at the end of the day. He was a Zulu. With 2 provinces on their side, they managed to overturn a decision which could have got ED to be president in 2004, to be vice president in 2004. Then the gender card was played. Say, no, we must bring in a woman VP. That was ultimately a masterstroke because no one could then say no. But the truth of the matter is that ED, if anything, was supposed to have been vice president during that time. So I'm not surprised that he's president today because it was always in the making. Kasukuwere, I was on ED's side. We nearly had a fight at HICC to a point that a group of youth, were about 30 of them, were sent to get me out of the Congress. Out of the Congress because I was vocal about it at the end of the day. We then moved, and then chairpersons were then fired at the time. Mujuru visited Chiangwa at his office and told them, you're part of this and you're coordinating, but you know that you've got many crimes while you're doing this. You have to call every chairperson that you're going on this side. Chiangwa did it, and with Mujuru sitting in front of you and telling you to call everybody, he had no choice but to do it. And that's how it all came to it. When I talk about Philip vacillating, I talk about that. And he then sold everybody out And the whole issue became weaker because he then started telling people, Professor Moyo, have your differences. But the problem with politics, which you've not understood, is that people work for a certain vision and for a certain leader. And he clearly supported ED. So is Daniel Shumba. The question that the media must be asking that, but why are these guys not stuck to that? Where is Daniel Shumba? Where is Daniel Shumba opposition? Why is it that anybody in ZANU-PF who had a powerful position becomes opposition? It's food for thought, but yet they were for ED. And what was critical at that point in time, that most of them suffered through their businesses. Daniel Shumba's businesses were taken away. There was paging, which happened at the time. And in that paging happening, people expect the leader who they support to come and cover them. But again, every leader has got his own strategy. One will come out, others don't, they remain quiet. And the current president has his own strategies of dealing with these matters. With what he has gone through, the persecution he went through during the Mugabe era, probably talks volumes of his strategy to be president today, because most people would have probably walked out, would have probably quit. But he's there. Credit to his strategy at the end of the day. But those that then follow you now suffer. And not only that, as leader, you come with a new team. So the team that you had, the original team, where is it? Now that you're in office, where is it? The foot soldiers at the time, where are they? Because they worked for you to be where you are today. Now you are there. Where are they? Where's Daniel Shumba? Where's Professor? Where is the spirit of reconciliation? Joining a political party is voluntary. You don't write a letter applying. I don't know if anybody who ever wrote a letter to a party saying, I want to be a member of this party. But they are quick at writing a letter expelling you. But when did I join? Where is evidence that I joined? So it remains voluntary at the end of the day. And because it remains voluntary, you have to have aspect of reconciliation. So I'm talking about the role Kasukuwere played at the time. This is Zulu supremacy. Then we move to 2013. Mayimjulu is in power. The late President Robert Mugabe was a Zulu, came from Zimba. And there were two districts that controlled the country. It was always Zimba and Chikoma. Wait. This time it has changed. It's Mberengwa and Gutu, if I'm not mistaken. If you follow the dynamics of politics. Rightfully so, because the Kakarangas are in power. At that time it was the Zuzu. They work together, then we come 2013. Suddenly I'm called G40. Do you realize that in 2000, Kasukuwere was the best man to the current vice president's wedding, marrying Jocelyn Chwenda? And I also aware that the house that he had in Borodale, he sold to Kasukuwere. So what I'm trying to establish, people have always had relationships, but nobody talks about that. I was never best man to Kasukuwere's wedding. Neither did I ever buy a house from him. But why are you so hypocritical? Who are you trying to please when you don't write the correct history as journalists? Do you know that? No one has ever written that. Today is the first time you're probably going to write it. They're always at the relationship. You cannot be a best man to a wedding when you're not close. Neither can you sell a house to somebody who was your best man. So these relationships, they've always been there. Is there anything wrong with them? No. Mayimjulu got into power. These Zulu men were not happy. 3 factions are in ZANU-PF. The then Secretary for Administration and Minister of State Security, Comrade Digmas Mtasa, then came up with a narrative of saying that Kunya Zipfukutu. Zipfukutu at that time was G40 and Lacoste. And there's no other Gamatox. So you get the Gamatox and go to Zif. And that was his narration. Him being State Security Minister, I'm sure he was privy to certain information. He was Secretary for Administration for the party, a confidant of the then president. So the factions in ZANU-PF in 2013 were Gamatok, were G40 and Lacoste. Now I want to tell you, the notion of Maim Juru wanting to be president is not true. That's the reason why I keep on talking to the people at the time. That's the reason why I keep on engaging Comrade Kasukuwere. You say, Comrade Kasukuwere, you were coordinator of this team that then came up with the Gamatoks being a cabal wanting to take over from the late President R.G. Mugabe. Ndipo pane nyaya ipa. Kuti saka, who was Comrade Kasukuwere working with? He was working with the current Honorable Vice President Chiwenga. He was working with the current President E.D. and many others. I thought I would bring the prominent ones. But nobody talks about that. And the coordinator of this team to get rid of Maim Juru was Kasukuwere. Were they not meeting at Kasukuwere's office in Central Avenue, at his Koma office? They were meeting. So I respect the whole veterans of this country. I respect Maim Juru, Comrade Didmas Mtasa, Rugare Gumbo, Comrade Mvundura, Comrade Kaukonde, Comrade Mshore, and my central was a chairman who trained Maim Juru Kondo. The president then was very clear. He was the center of power. Why is it that when the center of power is no longer the center of power, you then punish people who follow the center of power? We all did what the center of power wanted, that was R.G. Mugabe. We all did that. Today we're doing what ED wants. But why should then somebody coming in after ED start persecuting people who supported ED or supported Comrade Mugabe, the late? It's the center of power. Didn't the current president say Pamberina Comrade Grace Mugabe? He did. Did I? I never did. Get on the Munoma video guy. In a number of slogan, with Pamberina Mugabe, and I was never going to do it. Because you were it. Young is the agenda G40. So can ask Makuda put Munditi in G40. If Magagara pass Muchindi Zinga. Why do you forget history so quick? My videos in your good. So Tochi Zinga president has not right to Pamberina Comrade Namaimga. That's what the center of power wanted. He did that. But why persecute other people where there's no evidence that they were anything? So they teamed up. The president, R.G. Mugabe, was very clear who he wanted to be president. He wanted Maim Juru to be president because of the agreement that they had with the late Rex Mjuru. When Rex Mjuru was in power, they did not say anything. So this is the Zulu thing. So these men now, knowing very well that Maim Juru is likely to be in power, cooked up a story. That's what I want to tell you. You have people in leadership today who lied. They cooked up a story. And the reason why I continuously engage with Kasukuwere is to tell the truth. Could Kasukuwere, is it true that Maim Juru by Dr. Mugabe? And can I tell you the secret? Kasukuwere said no. And I said, one day may you tell Zimbabweans the truth. Because politics is such that when people want power, they cook up stories. At that point in time, CIO's reports were positive. Were pro-Mugabe, which means pro-Maim Juru. Police reports were Commissioner General Chuhuri were pro-Mugabe, which means pro-Maim Juru. Because if you were pro-Mugabe, whoever Mugabe wanted, you were pro as well. Prisons, the late Zimondi were pro. Air Force Shiri, they were pro. So I'm telling you the truth. So these four service chiefs were seen to be enemies supporting Mindjuru, yet they were liberators of the struggle and they were commanders. Only military intelligence was against. But it was not good enough to convince the president, then the late Mugabe, that there was something going on, because 4 reports were positive. 1 was not. That's when they then said, let's now recruit the first lady. Because the only way we can deal with distorting this information with Mindjuru power is through bedroom politics. The first lady, Mira Soko, one of Zimbabweans. Professor Moy was part of the team. Patrick Jean was part of the team. The current vice president was part of the team. The current president was part of the team. Kasukuwere. Chris Mchangwa joined again as a Zulu, was part of the team. Kasukuwere was national PC, he was their chairperson. So, who was G40? Who is my name there? Did you ever see me at that meeting? So why do you want to be reckless today and get us to tell the truth when we just want to be quiet? Anything which tarnishes my name, I'll speak up. They were G40. And I'll say it. Kasukuwere was the chairperson because he was a national PC, appointed by the president. So he was young, he chaired them. They then started their rallies of destroying Mindjuru's name and reputation through the first lady. I went to the Secretary of Administration, Comrade Mtasa, as chairman. I said, but what is happening is not good. Why are we allowing this to happen? They then went for Rugare Gumbo in the PB. He got expelled in the PB. Imagine Rugare Gumbo, all those guys sitting there, there's no one as senior as Rugare Gumbo. And they don't have shame on their faces to say they lied, to kick Munu, Darere Chimrenga. Kuti Ochibuda, Ochigara, Kuti Zanupef Ndea. Found a way Darere Chimrenga, Achibuda. Some of us, it does not sit well with us because but Darawa has no energy, but somebody is going to clean their image. He and have decided to clean their image so that when they die, Havans Vakapanduka. Imagine this Gumba Kapanduka. Kuti aida kuvisamka. Did Masimtasa Kapanduka, aida visamka. Mvundura Kapanduka, visamka. Kaukonde, and all the names. I said no. Before anything, while we're all alive. I'm not one who writes history when I'm dead. I like to deal with things when I'm alive. So there's got to be the truth. So there's a Zulus put together, I told you, who were critical. Kasukuwere, Mchangwa, the vice president, Wachiwenga, was there. Those were the key Zulus. Amongst these, 2 were politicians, Mchangwa and Kasukuwere. They never expected Wachiwenga to be vice president because they thought him being CDF, he was powerful enough. So they didn't see that card, could it be played later on. So when they successfully lied down to the president through the first lady with Mindjuru, Dr. Power, one of my chairpersons, where have you ever seen a party firing 9 chairpersons and remaining strong? Impossible. Chairpersons have been elected democratically. And because of that, it is a shadow following them. No one else is a shadow. A shadow of lies saying that Mindjuru wanted to be a thing. At no point did Mindjuru ever sit down with anybody to say, I want to be the president. At no point was there such a meeting. So they said, let's start with Temba. Kasukuwere was dogmatic, whether you like it or not. And the Madara, maybe one regret, one of words would pay chair. I such as 3 years and could one words one as one Asha, but I just see it as a personal issue. Could I chair one Mudiki, because I trust on Amka. Canada was Gadilla cannot tell an Amka and so forth. Is and Dinga Pindre because I was never part of it. I was never part of G40. I've never been part of G40. So now, Sadaraik, that Zinga Esa, Tanyep, anopinda ndiani vakaona kuti pari tu Kasukuwere anengira hapana anopinda na Mchangwa Mchangwa has always harbored ambitions of being a vice president, but without any political or economic capital with him. So, let's compromise, let's have a compromise candidate. The army was strong. Chiwenga was CDF. Chiwenga then proposed ED. Chiwenga then proposed ED. These ones could not say no, when ED got into power, which I always said he was supposed to be in power, like anybody else, can you all know the ones who temper can do the can open down power or no power chica? That's where it all messed up. But what I want to say to you, they were all part of G40. It then got split. Awapinda vatenga kusungana. Kuvatenga kusungana. G40 manje got disappointed. Got disappointed kuti ako isu tashanda se. Vanakasura kati no ngatirove vanhu vaisupporta ED vangatapinza isusu mu G40. Then they started paging. People were so-called Lacoste, as you would appreciate. That paging started. Where was I? Isu tangata toenda kuda. Tazingwa ne G40. Saka mondo ona chitara na Kasukuwere nasi moti ndiri G40. My G40 original ndana. So the paging started. The president, as we know, then escaped the country through the border. Through the border. And then G40 was there. And then in realizing that, then we then had the various dynamics that took place, and the various dynamics that took place is that at no point, ZANU-PF itself, that's how hypocritical they are. They must shut up. Can anybody in ZANU-PF now tell me who stood up at a Central Committee meeting when ED was kicked out? Who used to speak in Parliament when, is it not me who used to try and defend them? Show me. Where was, tell me today, when the current president was kicked out of ZANU-PF, who stood up in the Central Committee to say I'm resigning? Where was July? Where was the so-called lieutenants? Where were they? Where were they? We must be very honest. No one ever said anything. He was kicked out of ZANU-PF. It was only through the revolutionary march, which involved the people, which involved everybody, which involved the late Changira who agreed. Like any other leader, he was ailing, but I think he believed the only thing I can leave for the people is peace. And may his soul rest in peace. In his last days, he wanted peace for this country. With the democracy that he was fighting, what he went through, he gave him, said, let there be peace. But in being peace, there was supposed to be an inclusive approach. Did Nelson Chamisa not know that ED was going to be in power when we marched? We all knew. Who did not know? Even Mese Mulipopana. We all knew. We celebrated it because we believed it was a new era for Zimbabwe. So at no point did ZANU-PF bring ED into power. And may I remind them that it's not ZANU-PF that will put ED into power. It is the people of Zimbabwe. And you cannot betray the people of Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF is too small of a part of membership to come up with 5 million votes or 2 million votes. It's too small. Within ZANU-PF, the dynamics of play. 63% in the 2010 election, over 63% went to the MPs. 50.08% went to the president. If they had work to do, let them not focus on G40. Let them focus on the difference between 50.08 and 63%. And ask themselves, where did it go to? That's what analysts do. Focusing on G40, focusing on Chamisa is not the issue. The issue is that the president's ratings, are they high or low? And you're basing it from the 50.8% which you got. So where have you ever seen a party where MPs get more than the president? Because the MP is the chief campaign manager for the president in the constituency. Don't they see the problem that they have? May I remind them, ZANU-PF, number one problem we have is internal. You don't have confidence in your president. You have confidence in the MPs who got over 63%, 2/3. The president got 50.08. Can you answer why? So what is that got to do with MDC? What does that got to do with G40? It all has to do with not reconciling people. You cannot kick people out of office who have been elected. No wonder why we remain a threat. Because ndakavoterwa nevanhu, ndine vanhu kumashure. But what do you do to break that barrier? You reconcile with everyone to say, come. Mliswa enda kumashure kurungwe unoti kushanda nesu parali. Manjuru enda kumacentro munotaura zvakati kaukonde enda unotaura zvakati nekuti madzosa vanhu kumusangano kuti mushande pamwe chete. But if leadership does not see that, it becomes a problem at the end of the day. So now you've got the Karangas in power. But can I tell you one thing? These Zulus are also working with the Ndebeles, with the Manikas, to also get into power within the party. So this whole exchange will happen. I must say, unfortunately and sadly, I don't see the Ndebeles ever being at the helm of this country. I don't see the Samanyikas being at the helm of this country. But only because of the minority. Because politics is about numbers. So there's bigger dynamics happening which people must understand. There's an aspect of tribalism which you cannot. So now they're recruiting the smaller tribes the same way that the did. We're finished with that. And I hope I've clarified that. Mutamba was G40. He worked with Kasukuwere. Not only that, to the point where when the revolutionary march started, he ran away when that communique was done. We all know that. Matema Danda and Mahia are the ones who were left behind. If you remember, I also supported them in court. I would be with them at the end of the day. So for people like Mchangwa to speak about Chinu, peranaka. The real liberator of this country are quiet. They're not talking. They're anguishing in poverty quietly. But that's not to say they were not commanders in the struggle. They've just chosen to do that. Managing to be on top of a mountain and being given a loudspeaker to speak, that does not mean others cannot speak. We must respect people who have worked hard. Everybody shades a tear to be in power, and everybody must be rewarded. If you see people like Hopo Chingono today, Hopo was part of the Second Republic. And they promised him ZBC, and I would have liked to see him run ZBC with the mind that he has. Imagine if they've brought him on board to do that. But if you then work together and you don't give people what you promised, they're likely to be a backlash. All these people are Zimbabweans. But there's dishonesty. And in any struggle, there are those who win, there are those who lose, and so forth. Am I bitter? I don't have to be bitter. Two things that I wanted to achieve in my life as a politician was to be extremely close to the former late President Mugabe. And as chairman, in the months that I met him every month on a one-to-one for not less than 3 hours. 32, and nobody ever achieved that. I wanted to understand the man. I wanted to be close to the man. I was close to the man. Go to Mulumtap, go to George Aramba and say, did you ever see a provincial chairman who would spend 3 hours with the late president? While other ministers are there, Kamira, once we are Mangwan, Swans in the Anna Muscans, the Temple, so that we take, Swans the main president at Mangwan. I wanted to achieve that. I wanted to understand. He was an icon. He was my role model. I wanted to understand his thinking, how he got to be where he was. I achieved that. Number two was to see the current president being the president. I believed in his leadership. I have achieved that. So what more do I want? I don't have any government business. I don't have any government tender. I don't need business with the government. I don't need to interact with the president. If I have views on my own Twitter handle, I express them there. If there's national issues, I go to parliament. I'm able to express them. On behalf of ZANU-PF too, because they can't speak. On behalf of MDC too, because they can't speak. So all these issues, when you are passionate about something, if you worked for something, you must understand that you defend it, and you will also offer constructive criticism. These young boys like Tonde who come here. I'm surprised that journalists, unless of course you are paid to also write a story. I'll make you listen to a thing of voice note where he found me crying. He's under drug rehabilitation. I've helped him. So I'll show you, I'll get you to listen to it. The good thing about me, when you think of attacking me, you must be very clear I don't have anything against you. I defend myself. So I'll get you to listen to the voice note that is sent to me crying. That mukoma ndibesere indarasiro. Hansina chikafa ndina chiandina. He drinks. He needs help, that young man. He didn't finish his degree. He's been paid a few monies by Chiangwa. He's been paid a few monies by Tswangwa and so forth. But when you're paying these young boys, when they're under drug rehabilitation, be careful to backfire. You're now abuse. He has to go through his drug rehabilitation process and so forth. And it's not him that I blame, but it's the people at the end of the day. When AAG through Chiangwa writes that I have Susan Mutami say that, and Susan says, no, I never had it, then you wonder what was the point of writing such an article. But I also don't realize how big I am. That's when I realized, so I need to Sakanditola munhu mukuru. Ndinenge ndisingazive ka. Ndiudze asi ndiri munhu mukuru ere kunzoko. Imbondiudza ina asi ndindizive. Ngandiri munhu mukuru then ndizoziva nekuti ndoti varume vakuru vese aungana upamfana kuti press conference vangodhinauza chete temu. Tonde is a young boy who needs help. And I'll get you to listen to this audio, which is sent to me crying. And I said, I'll come and help you. And I've been helping him. So it's bad for them to abuse young boys who are going through rehabilitation. Them are drugs, Momtai, the press conference, Ottawa, and so forth. It doesn't mean well at all. Paging of the security. ZANU-PF has created its own problems. If there's anything that you don't tamper with, is the security. My police they've paged. And I'm going to worry, Makudzinga. Chira gonna pass. So, Indiana Commissioner General Pango, I'm not zingiri. India my instructions. Madzinga. Kusiao, Vananga is Devabunyongwe. Inini Cheron, Kungo Pejana, could you anga Babunyo Zimbabasa? Army, who anga na Zimbabasa. My generals, my poster with my ambassador. Can I tell you, there's no general who wants to be an ambassador. There's no general who wants to be an ambassador. Because they want to defend their country. They want to die in the military. There's no police officer who wants to be any other thing other than die being a police officer. Same as the Central Intelligence Organization. That's the environment. You take him to an ambassador to be a diplomat for what? He's a diplomat. They want to be in the barracks. So the paging has gone on. So now wanochika futi kuti vanaya vakataka page yako vakabata. Naso kandona chitaura na ningiri mprisa kadzinga zvanzi vari chicha vari kuronga. Ko ndini makadzinga ka. So indotadza kutaura nevanhu vakadzingwa here. Moshayo iri pa. Totadza kutaura here. Our leaders must show leadership, magnanimity, humility, forgiveness. Forgiveness. Do you know I had a story recently of these two young people who were drunk. They came to my restaurant, they did and they were drunk. And I went to their boss and said, I cannot make a report to the police because they were drunk. If they are sober, will they do what they did? No. So God just said to me, we must forgive. That's leadership. Because if they are sober, they are diligent. But when one is drunk, and you arrest them and you go and put a charge they were drunk, he'll tell you, I don't even know half of the things I did. So where is that leadership, that forgiveness from our leaders? They are worried about the paging that they've done themselves. And some of the brilliant army officers, police and CIO were paged. They were intelligent. So they worry. and so forth. So you then have this shadow that is following you and so forth. So I really thought it was important for them to understand that my meeting with Kasukuwere is clearly to tell me as the chairman of the G40 coordinating committee which kicked us out with, is it true that Chaida Tora Power? And Kasukuwere says no, it's not true. But and the reason why they don't like Kasukuwere has nothing to do with me. Can I have a chair, I have two Kaikokas meeting? So you cannot make me be an enemy of your enemy. I don't work like that. I've never worked like that. I'm Zimbabwean. We are young. I believe in a general consensus. The same way I'll go and see Chamisa, I'll talk to him. There's certain things I say, I want more. Sekuru. Is Rekutuma MP and so Mukachibudam Parliament as retail. Imi mchada ukita president kawandi kana maita mchada uti istisungeti bude. Aiwa regerera kare. Regerera tere. And that's the advice I give because I think it's important at the end of the day. So we speak to each other on national issues. We speak to each other on generational issues as well, which are what we do and so forth. So I have a whole lineup of people to see asking what really should we do about the country, and all I want is our name cleared at the end of the day. Mukatona mnotiti gamma stocks and so forth. Vaida kutora power kuna Mugabe, but yes, Kasukuwere said no. It was just a ploy. But Jeromanye Pamapinga, Amurambi Muni narrative yoyo. You see, Ndagambopinda, election is and pay for distributor in Sanda Pens. Chidakuja treasurer with the district. Niganotora 300 Shandi Wangu. Nemaskadi, recent Ndioka game racho. Kwa structure. Vanda winner. Kasunda winner get Iowa. Candidates to chocolate man in the win. And I started putting a proper structure here. So can I wapinda nechitsotsi? Kurumidza kuyadzirisha. You don't need many enemies at the end of the day. That's my advice. You don't need many enemies at the end of the day. He game at no time by Iowa, my comrades. Because I believe if the president was expelled by G40, and he says we're also expelled by G40, are we not the same? So why are we not back unconditionally? Did he write a letter to come back? No. Did Mtsanga write a letter to come back? No. Is Mtsanga more supreme than Juru? No. Than Mtasa? No. Than Ugari Gumbu? No. He was not even there when it happened. So there's got to be consistency. And I've already challenged this. I'm not going to write a letter and say what? You can't say that. So I thought I would just clarify that in some of this history, you forget that the real people who supported the president were 2004 and beyond. 1977 Congress in Chimoy, the first Congress, I was an APF outside Zimbabwe. Ask Mtsangwa, was he there? 1977. And the thing, the person who was there chosen to lead the women was Juru. You cannot destroy what any pains me, to be honest with you. She worked for this country. I get emotional. She worked for this country. She sacrificed as a woman. And the Juru hasn't got the thing reputation other women had in the struggle that we read about. You don't hear that. And she's a role model for the girl child, for one sacrificing their life. She came back, the late president made sure she was educated. She educated herself, she pushed, and she's there. And her image to be tarnished by Chris Mtsanga because of a propaganda. No, that I will not allow. My father was part of the struggle, and the history must be correct. I will defend the liberators of this country who are true. And it is quite spiritual, and it is quite unstoppable at this point in time. And I have to do that task. The record must be set properly. For a long time, we've given people the wrong narrative in this country. You journalists knowing the truth but choosing to think right nice. Let's talk about the 2004 Congress. Let's talk about the so-called Gamma talks. Where have you seen 9 chairpersons being fired and you call it is a faction? Out of 10. Where have you ever seen that? That was the mainstream of the party. I was chairman of Mashu's. MDs will tell you they were starting to think closed doors because we worked. We were not involved in anything, but we were moving to try and work for the party. So another Juruana did Masgurugare Gumbo, Kaukonde, I'm going to defend their history. Because one day, history will be written with So, mime Jurota we go by heroes, Eka, Nekuti, Mtrango akati vaida kubvisa ndingikiti. Who's Mtrango? The Chinese that we have in this country have been brought by Mtrango. Here's the deal in each thing. You saw that video where the Zambian mayor went and closed the Chinese shop. That's what is supposed to happen to that Chinese factory, not at the end of the day. But when they go there, they're all given envelope. He's defending the Chinese interests. Chinese don't vote in Zimbabwe. And they'll never vote in Zimbabwe. It's Zimbabweans who vote. We cannot be second-class citizens. And he does it with impunity. He does it with impunity. And we watch, but some of us will certainly not fold our arms. We have to defend the likes of Shiri, who I was close to, who liberated this country. Zimondi, who liberated this country. Tongo Gara, who liberated this country. Nikita Mangena. There must be somebody who defends their history, and the narrative must be honest. This whole Gamatos thing was not true. And I hope after this, Kasukuwere will be able to comment and tell the truth about it, because if he's truly Zimbabwean, he must be honest. I don't know if there are any other questions. I would want to also zero in on the primary elections quickly, which I think are going to be quite interesting in terms of setting the tone for 2023. But you know, Zimbabweans by their nature are not so keen in primary elections. You saw what happened in the last primary elections when we were in Parliament, on the 8th Parliament. ZANU-PF won in all the urban constituencies. But some even won by 1,000 votes. But the registered voters are 20, 30,000. It was a by-election. So I don't read too much into by-elections, but what is important for everybody is that before you go to a final, there must be a friendly match that you play. And I see it as a friendly match to see how well prepared are people at the end of the day. From a generational point of view, Zimbabweans are now behaving like Zambians, where 2 weeks before the election in Zambia, there was no post of HH. But when you spoke to people, the thing we said, we have registered. We are confident we are going to win. If we put more posters, we will raise awareness amongst the people. People have decided, they know what they want, and you cannot manipulate people or tell them anything else. They know what they want. And when the time comes, and that's God's time, it is indeed God's time at the end of the day. Nobody ever thought Mugabe would be out of power. We all had resigned to the fact that he would die in power. All of us here. We were only waiting for God's time. But again, what happened at the end of the day. The general elections is difficult. Primary elections, Mashingo is divided in terms of ZANU-PF. People say, why do we talk about ZANU-PF? We will continuously talk about ZANU-PF. So for you to tell me not to talk about ZANU-PF, it is the ruling party, it is the governing party. The policies that we have as ZANU-PF policies, which they come up with, Congress has ZANU-PF, conference has ZANU-PF, then they implement them through the government. So we'll continue talking about ZANU-PF and so forth. But when ZANU-PF is unstable, the country is unstable. Remember that. When ZANU-PF is unstable, the country is unstable. It's not in its say. So it's our prayer that these divisions within ZANU-PF do not happen. Mashingo is divided, Manikan is divided, Mash Central is divided. Mash East, they imposed a candidate there which was supposed to win, but it will be interesting to what then happened. Midlands, oh boy, you don't want to talk about Midlands. Yeah, it's in a mess. It's in a mess. So you're talking about 5 key provinces. You know, if one moment you divide Mash East and Mash Central from a statistic point of view, politically you're weak. If you look at the last elections, 2018, Mash Central and Mash East were big. At the moment that the votes go down in Mash Central and Mash East, it's an indicator that things are not good for things on the PF. That's your indicator. Those provinces never had divisions that control. They were controlled. There was command, ZANU-PF politics done, and they were disciplined. But now, with these elections, they create divisions at the end of the day. General elections, it's a youth vote, 2 issues that will drive people's changes, what they've thought about. One, inflation. Inflation is systematic. You go to the rural areas, you leave 100 bond notes for your mother to buy cooking oil or your grandmother. That's a Friday. On Monday she goes there, it's going up by 5 bond. It's 105. She doesn't manage to buy it. what is the immediate reaction? So you don't even have to go and campaign that there is inflation. It's there. It's there. And it has to be managed. But you cannot also be arrogant. While the president has done well in giving that directive at the end of the day for civil servants, but who didn't know that civil servants were suffering all this time? Does it require a directive from the thing president? We are in a US dollar economy, whether you like it or not. If I have to say to you all here, I'm not going to not customer US dollars now. So why do we want to lie? The economy, you don't lie about the economy. 2008, as stubborn as the late President Mugabe was, okay, he agreed to a GNU. He agreed to dollarization. Things stabilized. 2013, he won the election, 2/3. 2/3 he won the election from a GNU. Because people, when they go and vote, the first thing is the economy stable? And they realize, yes, it was stable. Who was the leader? Mugabe. Did they think of being finance minister? No. They thought of who the leader was at the time. Mugabe was the leader. We want him back because the economy is stable. We don't care how old he is. But can the economy has stabilized, so be it. The economy dictates how people vote. Corruption, when the Prosecutor General's office is failing to handle dockets from Anti-Corruption Commission. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission is doing a wonderful job, but the dockets are all sitting with the Prosecutor General's office. I've written letters of certain people who must be arrested high profile. I've been told the dockets have been done, but the Prosecutor General's office is sitting on it. So do you blame SAC? They don't prosecute? Over 200 dockets are sitting with him. For what? Goba was removed from office because there were allegations that he was sitting with some dockets as well. The same is happening. So how can you then say prosecution is happening? So there is some sabotage going on. That's the reason why in Parliament we must push for ZAC to have its own prosecutors, to have its own courts, so that nobody stands in the way. And credit must go to the Justice, to the Chair, Justice Lois Matanda-Moyo. She's an Iron Lady, I don't know whether you like it or not, she's an Iron Lady, and so forth. So that's what I think. Corruption, we have lost the war, totally. We are in the second gear of it. We are in the second gear of it, and it has implications on the economy because it's porous. It's porous. You talk about gold, which is caught at the airport. You don't talk about gold flying out in private jets. You don't talk about that. You don't talk about gold flying out in private jets. That is smuggled. You don't talk about cigarettes being smuggled. You don't talk about it. The smuggling that is happening is crazy of our own natural resources at the end of the day. The sad part is that the generation that we're living, we have nothing left in this country. All the agreements which have been put in place, whoever is a clever leader in the next tenure must cancel most of these deals. Must cancel most of these deals. The generations will be working for this, and you will see a very, very aggressive takeover of this country, and all these deals will be cancelled because they are not for Zimbabwe at all. They are not for Zimbabwe at all. The whites are making money. The foreigners are making money. Indigenization Act was repealed. 49, 51%, we don't have anything there. So what are we left with?